The night air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain that had washed the city streets earlier. Wine adjusted the strap of her dress nervously as she approached the dimly lit restaurant, even though she told herself this was just a casual dinner, just a harmless attempt to move on. Her stomach was knotted with anticipation. She had been dating casually for a few days now, but there was something about tonight that felt different, a faltering in her chest she wasn't entirely ready to admit. Across the street, neon lights flickered, bouncing off the wet asphalt, painting the night in streaks of electric blue and red. Vine took a deep breath and stepped inside, forcing herself to shake off the lingering memories of the past. She tried to focus on the present. She owed herself that much. The restaurant smelled faintly of grilled herbs and burning candles. Soft jazz played in the background, a gentle soundtrack to a night meant for laughter, conversation, and perhaps new beginnings. She scanned the room, looking for the man she had agreed to meet, Lucas. He waved from a corner table, a friendly smile on his face. His hair was neatly combed, his attire casual but stylish. He looked like he belonged in the world of polite laughter and clinking wine glasses. "Wine over here," he said, his voice warm and easy. She smiled, taking a tentative step toward him. "Hi, Lucas." They, ex- they exchanged polite greetings, and for a few minutes, Vine allowed herself to sink into the rhythm of conversation. The jokes, the story of mundane life. It was strange, she thought, how normal it all felt. For months, her life had been anything but normal, tangled with secrets, danger, and the shadow of one man who had dominated every corner of her heart and mind, Jungkook. She, she tried not to think about him. She told herself he was gone, that she had left that life behind. But a part of her, a dangerous part that she tried to bury, knew that someone like him never truly let go. As she laughed at something Lucas had said, the door to the restaurant swung open. A gust of cold wind followed, and for a brief moment, Vine's laughter faltered. Her heart did something unfamiliar. It clenched, then skipped. There he was, Jungkook. The world seemed to shrink around her. He didn't have to speak. His presence alone was a statement, a warning. Dark coat hanging from the border shoulders. Eyes like storm clouds that seemed to pierce through everything and everyone. And that quiet, controlled menace that made the air thrum with tension. He scanned the room, his gaze locking on her as though she were the only thing that existed. Time slowed. Lucas, unaware of the storm entering the room, continued speaking, gesturing with a wine glass. Wine's pulse raised, her body suddenly aware of every nerve ending. She had hoped, foolishly perhaps, that he would not find her, that this night would remain a sanctuary. But Jungkook had a way of finding her anywhere, always. She tried to stand, to move toward the door, but her feet felt rooted. Jungkook's eyes never left her, and with every step he took, the tension in the room thickened, like smoke curling into every corner. People were starting to notice, their whispers risking like to tide. Jungkook stopped a few feet from her table, his expression unreadable, a dangerous calm settling over him. "Wine?" he said, low, almost a growl. His lips parted, words failing her. Lucas followed her gaze, confusion knitting his brows. "Do you know him?" he asked cautiously. Wine swallowed, her throat tight. We know each other," she managed, though it sounded fragile, weak even. Jungkook's eyes darkened. He stepped closer, his movement fluid, predatory, closing the distance between them like a predator circling its prey. The hum of the restaurant seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of her heartbeat and the sharp, deliberate step of the man she had tried to forget. Without warning, he reached her. His hands were strong, almost impossibly so, as they gripped her upper hands and lifted her effortlessly, pressing her back against the wall behind her. The collision of her back with the cold, hard surface stole her breath, and a sharp gasp escaped her lips. The restaurant was silent, heads turned, glasses stopped clinking, conversations died mid sentence. Jungkook leaned close, his face mere inches from her. The scent of his cologne, dark, woody, impossible to ignore, filled her senses. Out with him? He asked, voice low, dangerous, almost strangled with controlled rage. Vine's heart hammered in her chest. Jungkook, You think you can just move on? He interrupted, his grip tightening slightly. And I wouldn't notice? Panic and anger collided within her. I'm not with him. We are just, it's a date, yes, but Jungkook's lips curved into a smirk, sharp and unyielding. A date? He echoed. So you're trying to replace me? Forget me that easily? His eyes darkened further, burning into hers, and she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Fear, yes, but also an undeniable pull, a magnetic force that made her body respond even when her mind screamed to resist. Lucas stood frozen a few feet away, his hands half raised, unsure what to do. Hey man, she is fine, okay? No need. Jungkook's gaze snapped toward him, cold and dangerous. Step back, he said, his voice a blade cutting through the air. Lucas hesitated, then nodded, retreating silently, leaving Wine entirely in Jungkook's grasp. Her breath came fast, shallow. Jungkook, please, she whispered, unsure what she was asking for. Mercy, release, or perhaps the very cold danger that terrified her. He tilted his head, examining her as if seeing her for the first time. You don't get to be out here, laughing, smiling with anyone else, he said finally, his tone softening slightly, but carrying an edge that promised danger. Not after everything. The tension between them was almost tangible, electric. Wine's hands pressed against his chest instinctively, as if trying to create some distance, some barrier. But it was useless. Jungkook was relentless. He leaned closer, his forehead almost touching hers, his dark eyes stormy and impossibly captivating. Why are you here, Jungkook? She asked, voice trembling. Why can't you just let it go? Let it go? He echoed, incredulous. Do you think it's that simple? You were mine, Vine. You still are, and seeing you with someone else, I can't stand it. His hand brushed a loose strand of hair from her face, and despite herself, she shivered at the touch. Her mind raced, heart pounding. She wanted to pull away, to run, to escape his dangerous pull he had over her. And yet, a part of her, a foolish, stubborn, undeniable part wanted to stay, to feel the heat of the fire of his gaze igniting something she had tried to bury. Jungkook's grip tightened ever so slightly, his voice dropping to a whisper meant only for her. Everyone here can see it, he said, gesturing to the restaurant. But I don't care. They can watch, they can see. You're mine. The world outside the walls of the restaurant seemed to fade. Time slowed again. People watched in stunned silence, unsure whether to intervene or simply bear witness to the storm of passion, danger, and unspoken history unfolding before them. Wine's mind reeled. Jungkook, please, not here, not like this. He smirked again, dark and knowing. Oh, Vine, I have waited too long for this moment. For you. His thumb brushed across her cheek, and despite the public humiliation, despite the fire of anger and fear in her chest, she felt something dangerous. Stir, desire, hate, and all flame refusing to die. Her, her pulse raced, her body betrayed her, and for a fleeting moment she wondered if she had ever truly loved him at all. He pressed closer, his voice low, dripping with possession and obsession. You can try to move on, you can try to hide, but I will find you always. The silence that followed was almost suffocating. Every patron in the restaurant had stopped what they were doing, some holding their breath, some whispering. Jungkook released her slightly, just enough to let her breathe, but his hands remained on her arm, anchoring her in place. Vine's eyes met his, a mix of fear, anger, and longing reflected in her gaze. Why? Why do you do this? She asked, voice trembling. Because, he said softly, almost reverently, you are the only one who ever mattered, and no one, not even him, can replace you. The words struck her like lightning. She wanted to scream, to push him away, to tell him to leave, but the pull, the tension, the undeniable connection between them held her captive. Even in anger, even in fear, she felt it, the magnetic force that had bound them together once, and she realized had never truly let go. Jungkook finally released her completely, stepping back, though his presence still dominated the space around her. He gave her one last look, possessive, dangerous, and filled with unspoken promises before turning toward the door. Without another word, he exited, leaving a trail of tension that lingered long after he was gone. Wine sank into her chair, trembling, her mind racing. Lucas stared at her, bewildered. Is he your ex? He asked quietly. She nodded, unable to speak. Words failed her. For months she had tried to move on, to forget, to live a normal life, and tonight Jungkook had reminded her in the most dramatic, terrifying, and intoxicating way that some ties could never be broken. The night that had begun as a simple attempt at normalcy had ended in chaos, tension, and a reminder that the past was never truly gone. And somewhere in the shadows of the city, Jungkook walked away, a storm contained behind his eyes, already plotting the next moment they would be alone again. Wine pressed her face into her hands, heart pounding, mind spinning. The world felt smaller, sharper, and definitely more dangerous than it had an hour ago. Because she knew one thing with absolute certainty: Jungkook is back, and he isn't leaving her alone this time. The city had quieted down after the rain, but the storm inside Wine's chest was only beginning. The memory of Jungkook's grasp on her arms, his piercing gaze, and the danger-laced whisper of her name replayed relentlessly in her mind. Every heartbeat thumped like a drum of warning, and yet, alongside the panic and fear, there was a heat she couldn't ignore, one that made her pulse quicken and her breath hitch involuntarily. Lucas had been patient, kind, even, but now, sitting across from her in the dim glow of the restaurant, his confusion and concern weighed heavily on her. Wine, I didn't realize, he started, but she shook her head. No, it's not your fault, she said softly, though her voice trembled. He's my ex, And she trailed off, trying to find words that could explain the impossible truth. Jungkook was more than an ex. He was a force of nature, one she had once surrendered to completely, and one who seemed determined to reclaim her, whether she liked it or not. Lucas frowned and said that, "Your ex? But that display, it wasn't normal, was it?" "No," Vine admitted, closing her eyes briefly. She still felt the echo of his hands on her arms, the weight of his presence, the way he had pinned her against a wall, like a claim, like a warning. It had been humiliating, terrifying, and she admitted reluctantly, intoxicating. Not normal at all. After a moment, she excused herself, leaving Lucas behind. She needed air, needed space, needed to remind herself she wasn't going to let Jungkook control her anymore. She stepped outside into the cool night, inhaling sharply. The streets were slick with leftover rain, reflecting neon lights that flickered and danced across the asphalt. And then he appeared. She didn't see him coming. One second she was alone, trying to steady her breath, and the next he was there, blocking her path. His eyes dark and unreadable. "Jungkook, always Jungkook. You can't just walk away," he said softly, almost a murmur, though the intensity in his voice made it impossible to ignore. "Not from me, not ever." Vine froze, her heart hammering. "Jungkook, please, just leave me alone. Not here, not now." He tilted his head, studying her. "Leave you alone?" he repeated incredulously. "After seeing you smiling at him, touching him, I can't, I won't." His voice was a low growl, threading with something that made her knees weak. Possession, jealousy, obsession, all wrapped in one suffocating force. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Why can't you just let it go?" "Because letting go isn't an option," he said, stepping closer, the distance between them shrinking until she felt his heart pressing against her. "I should have let you go months ago, but I couldn't. And now seeing you out there, it's like a knife sting in my chest." Vine swallowed, her mind racing. She had left him once for a reason, for safety, for freedom, for a life that didn't revolve around fear and danger. And yet here he was, back in her life, pulling her into the same orbit she had fought so hard to escape. "You don't get to decide that for me anymore," she said firmly, pushing against his chest, though she knew it wouldn't make him move. He was immovable, relentless. "I don't decide," he murmured, almost tenderly, though the possessive edge remained. "I protect, I take care, I don't let anyone hurt you or take you from me." His thumb brushed across her cheek, light, teasing, intimate, and in that moment Vine realized just how dangerous, how intoxicating his presence truly was. They stood in silence for a moment, the city around them fading into background noise. Then, as if sensing she was about to turn away, he stepped forward, blocking her escape. "I know you think you can just walk away, but I'm not letting you go, not again." Her chest tightened. "You don't get to control me, Chenko. I left the life, I left you." He smoked, dark and knowing. "You left the man, yes, but you didn't leave what we had. That connection, the bond, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't just vanish because you say it does." Vine's eyes narrowed. "It ended for a reason. You were dangerous, reckless, you scared me, you still do. And yet," he said softly, almost a whisper that only she could hear, "here you are, drawn to me anyway, even now." Her throat went dry. He wasn't wrong, she had found. Scream pushed him away. But every fiber of her being still recognized him, the pull, the magnetic force that had always existed between them. and that she had never been able to resist. "You can't stay here forever," she said finally, voice trembling. "I need space. I need." She trailed off, the words dying in her mouth. Space, freedom, safety, all things that seemed impossible when he was near. "I can," he said simply, stepping even closer. "Because I will. I will wait as long as it takes. You can't deny it, fight it, pretend it doesn't exist, but I will be here, always." For a long moment, they simply stood there, the city lights reflecting off the rain-slicked streets, casting long shadows over their unintertwined forms. And then, almost imperceptibly, he lowered his voice further. "Do you remember the night before you left?" Wine stiffened. Memories she had tried to bury resurfaced unburied. The quiet tension in his mansion, the dangerous thrill of his touch, the storm raging behind his eyes, and the desperate, almost pleading way he had looked at her before she had walked out of the door. "Yes," she whispered. "You were going to leave," he said, almost more to himself than to her. "And I couldn't let you go. I wanted to fight for you, but I was too reckless, too stubborn. I scared you away." His voice broke slightly, raw, vulnerable, the first crack in the wall of danger and control he always protected. Wine swallowed hard, her heart twisting. "You did scare me, Jungkook. That's why I left. I had to survive without you consuming every part of me." "And now?" he asked softly. "Do I still scare you?" She didn't answer immediately. Part of her wanted to say yes, to remind him of the distance she needed. But another deeper part, the part that had never truly let him go, recognized the truth. Yes, he terrified her. Yes, she wanted him. Both at once, and that realization made her head spin. "Jungkook," she began cautiously, her voice bare above a whisper. "This, whatever this is, it is too dangerous, too complicated." He stepped closer, closing the gap between them so entirely that she could feel the heat radiating off him. "Nothing about us was ever simple, Wine," he said softly, "and I wouldn't have it another way. I need you, not tomorrow, not someday, now." The words struck her like a hammer. Every rational thought in her head screamed to push him away, to run, to reclaim the life she had fought so hard to build. But her body betrayed her, leaning toward him almost involuntarily, drawn to the intensity, the danger, the undeniable pull of the man who had haunted her dreams and stolen her peace for months. And then, without warning, he captured her lips in a searing kiss, one that was possessive, demanding, and impossible to resist. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't tender, it was Jungkook in every sense of the word, dark, intense, and claiming. Vine's mind screamed, her heart raced, but her body melted against his. For a moment, the world ceased to exist. The past, the danger, the fear, all of it vanished under the force of the kiss. It was anger and desire, longing and obsession, all tangled together in one fiery, consuming motion. When they finally broke apart, gasping for breath, Wine's face was flushed, her chest heaving. Jungkook's eyes bore into hers, stormy and dark, and she saw him, the raw needed, their need for her, for what they had, for the bond that had never truly broken. "You can't fight it," he whispered, voice rough from the intensity of the kiss. "But you will never win. Not against us, not against me." Her hands gripped his shoulders instinctively, torn between pushing away and holding on. "Jungkook, we can't. It's dangerous." "And yet," he murmured, his forehead resting against hers, "I have never been more certain of anything in my life. You, me, us. That's the only truth that matters. Vine closed her eyes, letting herself feel the truth in his words, even as fear, anger, and desire whirled inside her. The city around them was quiet, the street deserted, and yet nothing had ever felt more alive, more raw, more real than this moment. An hour later, Vine walked briskly, heels clicking on the pavement, every nerve in her body alert. Her mind still reeled from the last encounter with Jungkook. The guest, the possessive intensity, the unshakable magnetism that pulled her toward him despite every instinct screaming to run. She had tried to convince herself that she could resist him, that she could maintain the wall she had built after leaving that dangerous world. But now, standing on the edge of her apartment balcony, watching the city lights shimmer like distant stars, she realized just how futile the effort had been. He had invaded her life in ways she hadn't thought possible. One look, one touch, and every rational decision she had made crumble. Jungkook wasn't just back, he was inside her mind, her heart, every thought. And she hated herself for missing him. The sound of a motorcycle engine broke the stillness of the night. She stiffened. It had been weeks since the last encounter, yet he had found her again. Her pulse quickened as she turned, and there he was, leaning casually against his black motorcycle, and headlights casting shadows across his sharp features. The dark coat he always wore seemed to swallow him in mystery and danger, and yet somehow it felt accentuated. The raw, the magnetic energy he exuded. Missed me? His voice carried easily across the distance, low and teasing, but threaded with an unmistakable edge of ownership. Jungkook, you can't just. Wine's lips pressed into a thin line. Can't just what? He pushed off the bike, stepping toward her with that calm, predatory grace that had always unnerved her. Show up, remind you that you belong to me, that you have never really left. She turned away, heart hammering. I'm not yours anymore. You can't just run me like that. He chuckled softly, a dangerous teasing sound. Control? No, Wine, this isn't about control. This is about truth, about what's real, and what's real is you, me, always. Her breath hitched as he stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. She tried to resist, tried to push him away, but it was useless. Every nerve screamed in response to his nearness, to the familiarity of his presence. You have changed, she said finally, voice trembling. You can't expect me to just fall back into this. And I'm not asking for you to fall, he murmured, lowering his voice so it was intimate, private. I'm asking you to stop pretending, to stop fighting the pull between us. Because you feel it too, Vine. I see it in the way your body reacts, the way your heart races when I'm near. Don't deny it, not to me, not to yourself. Her hands trembled as she reached out, brushing her fingers along his jaw almost absent-mindedly. You are impossible, she whispered, and yet irresistible. He countered immediately, his thumb tracing along the line of her cheekbone, drawing her gaze up to meet hers. Look at me, just look at me, Vine. Tell me you don't want this. Tell me you don't want me. She couldn't. She opened her mouth, closed again, then finally shook her head, barely audible. I can't. Jungkook's lips curved into a triumphant, possessive smile. Good, he said, his hand sliding down to the small of her back, pulling her into his chest. Because neither can I. The city night behind them painted a backdrop of gold and red, but all she could see was him, the storm of danger, the desire that had once consumed her life, now threatening to consume her heart all over again. He leaned closer, his forehead resting hers against. Let me, he whispered, let me remind you what we had, what we still have. No walls, not pretending, just us. Her resolve wavered. She could feel the tension in her body unraveling, the old fire awakening. She knew the danger, his world, his past, the life she had tried to escape. But right now, standing in the darkness with him, all of that seemed distant, irrelevant, secondary to the need pulsing between them. With a shaky breath, she allowed herself to lean into him. He caught her instantly, arms wrapping around hers with the familiar strength she remembered so well. The world seemed to narrow until it consisted only of them, the night air thick with heat and unspoken promises. You don't know what you are doing, she murmured, half scolding, half breathless. I know exactly what I'm doing, he replied, his lips brushing against hers in a feather light kiss that sent shivers down her spine. I'm reclaiming what's mine, you, every part of you. The first kiss was gentle, testing, almost exploratory, but the restraint didn't last. Wine's hands tangled upon the kiss, possessive, demanding, a masterful mix of control and desire. Every inch of her body responded, every nerve ending alive with longing. He pulled back just enough to look at her, dark eyes smoldering. You're mine, he said, low and unyielding, and I have waited too long to hear you deny it. I'm yours, she admitted softly, her voice trembling with vulnerability and desire. Always. A triumphant, dangerous smile curved his lips as he pressed her against the railing of the balcony, hands sliding along her back, her sides exploring her as if committing to her memory. The city lights reflected in her eyes, sparkling, yet nothing compared to the fire ignited between them. They moved together like a storm finally finding its release, a dangerous rhythm born from months of longing, pain, and suppressed desire. Each touch, each kiss, each whispered word drew them closer, melting anger and passion into a combustible mix that neither of them could resist. You have been away, he murmured, voice rough with need, but I never stopped thinking about you, never stopped wanting you, and now he captured her lips again, more instantly this time. Hands exploring, claiming, drawing her closer, and now you're here, and you can't just leave me again, not ever. Vine's response was instinctive. She pressed herself to him, letting go of the wall she had built so carefully. Fear mingled with excitement, hesitation with desire, creating a hairy, intoxicating blend. She wanted him, she needed him, and she realized she always would. They broke apart earlier, foreheads resting together, breasts mingling, hearts racing in perfect sync. You are reckless, she whispered, laughter and heat threading her words. And you love it, he countered, smirk tugging at her lips. Admit it, Vine. Admit that you missed this. You missed me. She shook her head, feigning resistance, but the heat in her chest betrayed her. Maybe I did, he admitted, voice soft, almost breathless. Maybe a little. Jungkook's love was dark, low, satisfied. A little, he teased, his hand sliding along her sides, eliciting a shiver from her. You have missed it all, me, us, every bit of it. Her lips found his again, soft at first, then gradually, urgently, as if trying to make up for lost time. The world around them ceased to exist. The city, the night, the danger. All that mattered was the storm between them, the fire that refused to die, the bond that had never broken. Hours seemed to pass in the mere moments. Words were unnecessary. Every kiss, every touch, every whispered name conveyed what months apart could not. They were together again, tangled in shadows and desire, rediscovering the heat and intimacy that had always defined them. Finally, as the night deepened and the city slept behind them, They rested together on the balcony, bodies entwined, hearts still racing, breaths mingling. Jungkook's fingers traced ideal backtones along her arms, her face, her back, as if memorizing every curve, every line, every part of her that he had lost once and refused to lose again. "You're mine," he whispered again, softer this time, almost reverent, "all of you. And you're mine," she replied, voice equally soft yet filled with the promise of surrender and devotion, always and forever.